midnight screams.
1. The silent hitchhiker I pick up every week takes all my anxiety away. I just found out where he's been putting it. My world is small. It's composed of the four walls of my tiny rented apartment, the soul-crushing beige cubicle where I work, and the worn-out vinyl seats of my late father's car. The car is the only thing he ever gave me that felt like a gift instead of a burden. It's a heavy, old boat of a thing, a relic from an era I never knew, and most nights, it's my sanctuary. You see, I have this pressure, a constant, low-frequency hum of dread that lives behind my eyes. It's a cocktail of financial anxiety, social awkwardness, and the crushing, existential weight of a life that feels like it's being lived on a treadmill set to a slow, grinding pace. Some nights, the pressure gets so bad I feel like my skull is going to crack. So I drive. I drive down a long, lonely stretch of state highway that cuts through the darkness between towns. It's a road to nowhere, really. Just 2 lanes of cracked asphalt, flanked by endless silent fields and the occasional skeletal tree. It's out there, in the deep, velvet black of the night, that I do something I know is stupid. I pick up hitchhikers. I know the risks. I've seen the news reports, heard the horror stories, but the truth is, I'm lonely, and the damn quiet, contained intimacy of sharing a small space with a stranger for a few miles, it helps. It's a brief, fleeting connection in a life that has none. A way to feel like I'm not the only person awake in the world. The first few were normal. A young soldier on a weekend leave, his uniform crisp, his stories of basic training both boring and fascinating. A college kid with a beat-up guitar case, heading home for the holidays. They'd talk, I'd listen, and for a little while, the pressure in my head would ease, replaced by their stories. Then, one night, I picked him up. He was just standing on the shoulder of the road, a tall, thin silhouette against the faint glow of the moon. He wasn't thumbing a ride. He was just standing there, waiting. I pulled over, my gut telling me to keep going, but my loneliness and boredom won out. He opened the back door and slid in without a word. He was off. His clothes were simple, dark trousers, a button-down shirt, but they were cut in a style that was vaguely out of date, like something from a photograph from 30 or 40 years ago. He was unnaturally still, his hands resting on his knees, his posture rigid. He didn't speak. He just stared straight ahead and, with one long pale finger, pointed down the road. I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. "Sure thing," I mumbled, and pulled back onto the highway. We drove in total, unnerving silence. The usual classic rock station on my old AM radio seemed to have faded to pure, hissing static the moment he got in. The silence in the car was so absolute it felt heavy, like a physical weight pressing in on me. I kept glancing at him in the rearview mirror. He never moved. He didn't even seem to be breathing. Miles crawled by. The knot of anxiety in my stomach, the pressure behind my eyes, it was a screaming, frantic thing now. The enclosed space of the car felt like a coffin. I was about to pull over, to tell him to get out, when he slowly, deliberately lifted his hand and tapped twice on the passenger side window. We were in the middle of nowhere. No lights, no houses, no crossroads, just the empty road and the dark fields. I pulled over. He got out as silently as he had gotten in, closed the door with a soft click, and stood on the shoulder of the road as I sped away. I didn't look back. And then it happened. It was like a switch was flipped. A dam inside me broke. An incredible, inexplicable wave of pure, blissful relief washed over me. The crushing pressure in my head didn't just ease. It vanished. Completely. The knot of glass in my stomach dissolved into warm, liquid peace. The static on the radio suddenly cleared, and a song I loved came on, sounding crisper and more vibrant than I had ever heard it. The air in the car, which had felt stale and suffocating, now tasted clean and sweet. I took a deep, shuddering breath, the first truly deep breath I felt I had taken in years. The dread of my job, The fear of the bills, the constant grinding anxiety. It was all gone. I was light. I was happy. I spent the rest of the night driving with the windows down, singing along to the radio, feeling a joy so profound it was almost a religious experience. The feeling lasted for 2 glorious days. I was a different person. I was confident at work. I made jokes with my coworkers. I slept a deep, dreamless, perfect sleep. But by the 3rd day, the pressure started to seep back in, a slow, creeping tide of the old dread. I knew what I had to do. I had to find him again. That night, I drove back out to that lonely stretch of road. I drove for an hour, a desperate hope warring with the fear that it had just been a fluke, a bizarre, one-time psychological event. And then I saw him, standing on the shoulder, in the exact same spot, as still and silent as a statue. My heart leaped. I pulled over. He got in. The same unnerving silence. The same empty miles. The same 2 taps on the window. And the same glorious, euphoric, soul-cleansing release the moment he was gone. It became my therapy, my addiction. Once a week, every Tuesday night, I would make my pilgrimage. I would drive out to the road, and he would always be there. I would pour all of my accumulated stress, anxiety, and sadness into the silence, and he would take it. He would carry it away into the darkness, leaving me clean, light, and free. My life transformed. With the anxiety gone, I was able to function. I got a small promotion at work. I started talking to people, making tentative friendships. For the first time, I felt like I was actually living, not just surviving. All for the price of a few gallons of gas and a silent weekly ride with a ghost. But after a few months, the effect started to diminish. The high wasn't as high. The relief wasn't as absolute. The feeling of peace would only last a day, then half a day. The passenger was still taking something, but it felt like he was only taking the top layer, leaving the deeper, older anxieties untouched. I needed more. I needed a stronger dose. And if he only fed on my negative emotions, I realized, with a chilling addict's logic, that I would have to give him more to eat. I started to cultivate my own misery. I began to farm my own dread. I started small. I'd deliberately miss a bill payment, just so I could spend a few days with the cold dread of a late fee notice hanging over my head. I'd take on extra, impossible deadlines at work, knowing I would have to work myself to the bone just to feel that raw, frantic stress. And it worked. The more miserable I was during the week, the more powerful the release was on Tuesday night. The high was back, better than ever. So I pushed it further. I started picking fights with my boss over trivial things, reveling in the hot, angry surge of adrenaline and the subsequent days of walking on eggshells. I started borrowing money I didn't need, just to feel the crushing weight of the debt. I was a self-destructive artist, and my medium was my own life. I was tearing it apart, piece by piece, just to have a stronger negative emotion to feed the silent man in my car, so I could feel a few hours of peace. It was a vicious, insane cycle, and I was completely, hopelessly trapped within it. The accident happened 3 weeks ago. It wasn't even his fault, not directly. It was mine. I was driving home from a deliberately terrible day at work, a day where I had accidentally deleted a crucial file, incurring the full, screaming wrath of my supervisor. I was buzzing with a potent cocktail of shame and anxiety, already looking forward to my ride the next night. I was distracted. I ran a red light. It wasn't a bad crash. The other driver was fine. My old car was crumpled, but fixable. My only injury was a clean break in my left tibia, a broken leg. At the hospital, as I was lying in the ER, a doctor came in with my x-rays. He put them up on the light box. "Well, the good news is, it's a simple fracture," he said, pointing with a pen. 6 to 8 weeks in a cast, and you should be good as new." He paused, his brow furrowed. He tapped a spot on the x-ray, a little higher up on my tibia, away from the break. "But What is this? I looked. There, on the image of my bone, was a strange, dark, spiderweb-like growth. It was a shadow on the film, a patch of darkness that didn't belong. It looks like some kind of a lesion, the doctor said, his voice now a low clinical murmur. A tumor, maybe. We need to run some more tests. The next week was a blur of scans, needles, and quiet, worried conversations in hospital hallways that I wasn't supposed to hear. Finally, the doctor sat me down in a small, sterile office. He had a file in his hands and a look on his face that I knew was not good news. "I'm not going to sugarcoat this," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "The growths, they're not just in your leg. They've spread. They're in your lungs, your liver, your spine. It's a very, very aggressive form of cancer. And the strangest part is, we can find no record of it in your previous medical files. It's as if these tumors, already at a late stage, have appeared out of thin air in just the last few weeks." I just stared at him, my mind a roar of white noise. He kept talking, using words like prognosis and palliative care and making arrangements. But I wasn't listening. I was thinking about my silent passenger. I was thinking about the weekly ritual. I was thinking about all that pain, all that anxiety, all that dread I had fed him. It hadn't just vanished. It had to go somewhere. Did he converted them somehow? He had taken my mental anguish and transformed it, giving it back to me in a new, physical, and utterly malignant form. The tumors were my anxiety. They were my dread. They were the physical manifestation of all the poison I had willingly cultivated and then handed over. The doctor's final words cut through the haze. "There are some treatment options we can try, but to be frank, I've never seen anything progress this quickly. I can't predict what will happen. But I could. I knew what would happen. The doctor had said it was too late. There was no cure for this. And in that moment of absolute, soul-crushing certainty, a strange, quiet calm settled over me. I'm dying. That is a fact. And with that fact comes a whole new world of fear. The fear of pain. The fear of the unknown. The fear of leaving nothing behind. It's a vast, crushing, ultimate anxiety. The strongest dose I've ever had. And I know exactly what to do with it. I checked myself out of the hospital this morning. My leg is in a cast, but I can drive. My old battered car is waiting for me. And tonight is Tuesday. I'm writing this as my final goodbye. And as a warning, be careful what you wish for. Be careful of the easy solutions, the silent helpers who offer to take your burdens away. It's better to carry your own pain. It's better to face your own dread, because the things that offer to take it from you are not your friends. They're just looking for a new place to put it. I'm not afraid anymore. That's the strange part. My decision is made. The doctor said my time is short, so why should I spend it in terror? Why not spend it in that clean, pure, blissful peace, even if it's just for a day or two? It's time to go now. My car is waiting. The lonely road is calling. And I know, with an absolute certainty, that he'll be out there, standing on the shoulder, waiting for me. And I have one last, beautiful, terrible gift to give him. One final ride. 2. A company sent me a cure for my father's grief. When the bottle ran out, their final automated message told me to kill him. My life has been on hold for a year. A year ago, I was supposed to be moving out, starting my own life. I had an apartment lined up, a job waiting. Then, my mother died, and my world, along with my father's, simply stopped. She was the sun in his sky. They were one of those couples you see in old movies, completely, utterly devoted to each other. When she died, suddenly, from an aneurysm, the light just went out of him. The grief was a physical thing, a crushing, heavy blanket that smothered our entire house. At first, it was what you'd expect. Crying, a refusal to talk about her, or an inability to talk about anything else. He stopped going to work. He stopped seeing his friends. I made the decision to stay. I couldn't leave him like that. He was my dad. I put my own life on pause, telling myself it would just be for a few months, until he got back on his feet. But he never did. The grief didn't lessen. It metastasized. It started with him not eating. He'd just push the food around his plate. Then he stopped getting out of bed. The vibrant, strong man who had taught me how to ride a bike and build a bookshelf was replaced by a hollow-eyed ghost who just laid there staring at the ceiling, wasting away. We went to doctors. So many doctors. They ran every test imaginable. Physically, they said, he was fine. There was nothing wrong with him. It's psychological, one of them told me, with a detached clinical sympathy. Severe, prolonged grief reaction. He needs therapy. Maybe medication. We tried that. The therapist would come to the house, and my dad would just stare at them, his eyes empty, refusing to speak a single word. He wouldn't take the pills. He was just giving up. He was letting himself die, following her into the dark. It's been a year now. He's a skeleton, a fragile collection of bones under a thin, papery skin. He gets his nutrients through an IV drip that I learned how to set up myself. He hasn't spoken a word in 6 months. I spend my days changing his sheets, cleaning him, watching his chest rise and fall with shallow, ragged breaths, and just waiting for the end. My own life has become a ghost, a half-remembered dream of a future I was supposed to have. Then, 3 weeks ago, the phone rang. It was a private number. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Good morning, a cheerful, professional-sounding woman's voice said. Am I speaking with the caretaker of... She said my father's full name. A cold knot of unease tightened in my stomach. Who is this? I asked. I'm calling from a private biomedical research firm, she said, her voice smooth as silk. We specialize in unique solutions for profound psychological trauma. We've been reviewing your father's medical case, and we believe we can help. I felt a surge of anger. My father's medical case? That's confidential. How did you get that? This is illegal. I'm reporting you. I understand your concern, she said, her tone never wavering. And I do apologize for the unorthodox nature of this call. Our methods of data acquisition are proprietary. But please, before you hang up, just consider your father. The prognosis is not good, is it? The doctors have given up. They're just managing his decline. He's going to die. You know that. We are offering you a chance, a cure. Her words cut through my anger like a scalpel. She was right. He was dying. I was just his hospice nurse, waiting for the inevitable. What kind of cure? I asked, my voice a hoarse whisper. Our treatment is based on the principle of sensory anchoring, she explained. We believe that in cases of extreme grief, the psyche becomes untethered. It needs a familiar, powerful anchor to pull it back to reality. We can create that anchor. And, as our treatment is still in the final trial phase, we would be happy to provide it to you completely free of charge. Free, a cure. It sounded too good to be true. It sounded like a scam. But I looked through the doorway, at the skeletal figure lying still and silent in the dim light of the bedroom, and the desperation, a feeling I had been living with for so long, won out over my skepticism. What do I have to do? It's a very simple process, the woman said. We just need a biological sample from the object of his grief, your mother, something she had close contact with, something that would retain a strong, personal essence. A hairbrush is ideal, a piece of well-worn jewelry, a favorite article of clothing. It was morbid. It was ghoulish, but I was beyond caring. And what do I do with it? She gave me an address, a P.O. box in another state, and told me to mail the item there. That was it. Once we receive the sample, we can synthesize the anchor. You should receive the treatment within a week. That night, I went into my mother's closet for the first time since she died. I had kept her room exactly as she had left it, a perfect, heartbreaking time capsule. The air was thick with her scent, a faint mix of her favorite perfume and something that was just her. I opened her jewelry box. On the top, lying on a bed of velvet, was her old silver-backed hairbrush. I could still see a few of her long, dark hairs tangled in the bristles. My hand was shaking as I picked it up. It felt like a grave desecration. I put it in a padded envelope and mailed it the next day. A week later, a small, unmarked cardboard box arrived. There was no return address. Inside, nestled in a bed of black foam, was a single, small, elegant perfume bottle. It was made of a dark, violet-colored glass, with a simple silver atomizer. There was no label. Tucked alongside it was a small, folded piece of paper with a single line of instructions, printed in a clean, sterile font. Administer 1 spray into the air near the subject, once per day. That was it. I opened the bottle, my curiosity overriding my unease. I sprayed a tiny amount onto my wrist. The scent that bloomed in the air was beautiful. It was a complex floral, with notes I couldn't quite place. And underneath it, there was something else. A warmth, a softness. A scent that was so deeply, achingly familiar, it made my chest tighten. It was my mother. It wasn't just her perfume. It was her. The scent of her skin after she'd been working in the garden, the faint smell of the vanilla she used in her baking, the very essence of her presence. It was all there, perfectly, impossibly recreated in this little bottle. It was a liquid memory. I went into my father's room. He was lying there, the same as always, his eyes open but seeing nothing. I held the bottle a few feet from his face and, with a trembling hand, I pressed the atomizer. A fine, fragrant mist settled in the air around him, and his eyes focused. It happened instantly. The vacant, empty stare was gone. His eyes, for the first time in a year, locked onto mine. A flicker of recognition, of confusion. He took a breath, a deep, rattling breath that was stronger than any I had heard him take in months. "Son?" he whispered, his voice a dry, cracking rasp from disuse. Tears streamed down my face. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. I had a terrible dream," he said, his eyes scanning the room. Where's your mother?" It was the most painful question he could have asked. But it was a question. He was back. The next few weeks were a miracle, a resurrection. Every morning, I would give him a single spray of the perfume, and every day, he got stronger. He started eating solid food again. He sat up. He started walking, at first with a walker, then on his own. The color returned to his face. He gained weight. The hollow-eyed ghost was gone, replaced by my father, he cried. He apologized, over and over, for the year I had lost, for the burden he had been. We talked. We mourned my mother together, properly, for the first time. Our house, which had been a tomb, was filled with life again. I was so full of a profound, grateful joy. The strange company, the ghoulish methods, it didn't matter. They had given me my father back. But as the initial euphoria faded, I started to notice the new routine that had formed. The perfume was the linchpin of his existence. He couldn't function without it. He would wake up in the morning, groggy and disoriented, his eyes holding a trace of that old, vacant look. He would be listless, confused. Then, I would administer the spray. The effect was immediate. His eyes would clear, his posture would straighten, and he would be himself again. It was like winding up a clockwork man every morning. He was completely, utterly dependent on it. It was an addiction, but it was a life-saving one. Or so I thought. Yesterday morning, I picked up the bottle. It felt light. I gave it a shake. It was almost empty. There was maybe 1, 2 sprays left. A cold, hard knot of panic formed in my stomach. I had tried calling the Adarbal company's number before, just to thank them, but it had always gone to a disconnected tone. I gave my dad his morning spray. I had to tell him. "Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The medicine, it's almost gone." The color drained from his face. The cheerful, recovered man I had been living with for the past month vanished, replaced by a stranger. His eyes went wide with a raw animal panic. "No," he whispered. No, that can't be. I need it. I need her. It's okay, I said, trying to soothe him. You're better now. You're strong. You don't need it anymore. You don't understand, he roared, his voice suddenly full of a terrifying strength. He grabbed my arm, his grip like a vice. I can't lose her again. I can't. He was a different person. This wasn't grief. This was a raw, desperate, violent need. A junkie's rage. He spent the rest of the day in a state of agitated, paranoid terror, pacing the house, constantly asking me if I'd found more. This morning, I gave him the last spray. He calmed down instantly, but the moment was bittersweet. I knew that in 24 hours, the monster would be back. I spent all day trying the company's number, over and over. Finally, someone picked up. It wasn't a person, it was a cold, automated female voice. Thank you for calling, the voice said, its tone flat and detached. Due to a recent government investigation and a cessation of our operations, this company is now permanently closed. We are no longer able to provide our services or products. My heart sank. No, please, I whispered at the recording. If you are a former client, the voice continued, and your treatment supply has been depleted, we sincerely apologize for any inconvenience. We are unable to synthesize any further doses. It has been noted in our late-stage trials that discontinuing the treatment can result in acute psychological distress and unpredictable aggressive behavior in the subject. The sensory anchor becomes a psychosomatic necessity. The subject will not recover. Their decline will be rapid and irreversible. The recording paused for a beat. We strongly advise you to secure your own safety. If you are unable to contain the subject, our final recommendation is euthanasia. We are sorry for your loss. Have a nice day. The line went dead. I'm writing this now from my bedroom. I have the door barricaded with my dresser. My father is in the living room. Or, the thing that used to be my father is in the living room. The perfume wore off about an hour ago. I can hear him. He's destroying the place. I hear the crash of furniture, the shattering of glass, and I hear his voice screaming. He's not screaming my name. He's screaming hers. He's screaming for his wife, for her scent, for the anchor that is no longer there. A few minutes ago, he started throwing himself against my bedroom door. The wood is splintering. He's stronger than I could have imagined. This isn't grief. It's something else. The cure didn't just bring him back. It twisted him into something that cannot live without the object of his grief. The recording's final words are echoing in my head. Our final recommendation is euthanasia. Kill him. Kill my own father. I don't know what to do. The police, they'll just see a sick, violent old man. They'll take him to a psychiatric hospital. He could hurt someone. He could hurt himself. He's in so much pain. A pain so much worse than the quiet fading he was in before. Is it the merciful thing to do? The banging on the door is getting louder. The wood is cracking. He's going to get in soon. I don't have much time. What do I do? What in God's name do I do? 3. In time there once was humanity. There once was air to breath and a world to love. There was a time you could still see the light in people's eyes when they were filled with passion. And we didn't simply survive. There were things like art, dance, and life. Things I've never seen but my grandfather describes, and every time he does, I know he isn't with me anymore. He's back in a time where trees grew from the ground, where humans weren't the only things to roam our world. And I would give anything to see that world with his eyes. Lots of things weren't quite the same as they used to be. Time had been wrung of all of its confusing technology and returned back to a simpler time. To a time where music sounded further away, played from a large brass machine. As many living things died and sunsets were replaced with the endless smog cast in pink and blues, things that were mundane started to fade from existence. I was born into this world of gears and goggles, engineering hitting a peak of inventive science. My mother was the most respected engineer in our country of steam machine. She had invented a way for humans to breath when every tree had been burned or cut down. I had never seen a tree before. I probably wouldn't know what the word is if my grandfather hadn't taught it to me. He was growing up in a time period he calls the ending, but Mom hates it when he calls it that. Everyone else calls it the Phoenix Age, in which everything was burned from existence until a better generation rose from its ashes. From how Grandpa describes it, it sounds much more like an ending than an intermission. The fading of life in every form, plants, the sky which is now concealed by the grayscale smoke that acts as a mask of our world, and most of all, animals. I've never seen more than a spider or beetle. Somehow, bugs continued to thrive and infest, but I had never seen any other types of animals. What is most overwhelming, though, is how Grandpa describes people, and for some reason, I can't help but imagine them as completely different from the ones I've seen. He says that humans used to be such a cute species, entertaining each other with dance and music, that humans would put bells on their doors to alert them when others would arrive, that they would take other animals and adopt them into their homes and treat them as their own kin. He talks about humanity with such a romantic longing that looking at what walks the planet, I can't help but think that there is no way they turned from laughing, passionate intelligences to faded skin, dull eyes, and the soft whir of breathing machines inside their throats. I can't even imagine a society without hearing that white noise. It seems like the silence would be so loud, and every time I pointed this out to Grandpa, he said that the loudest silence was when the blackouts happened, too much snow, and the lights shut down, and they would wait hours for the light to come back. That was when silence was its loudest. I didn't have the heart to tell him that I didn't know what snow was. Every day I heard these types of stories, and every day I saw the world in a different light. The sluggish humans were decaying before my eyes, and Grandpa and I seemed to be the only ones who noticed, but neither of us could do something about it. The rust and old pieces of another world covered the floor as they became less and less human. As I got older, I noticed it. Metal replacing bone, gears for organs, and finally blood removed as not to damage the metal inside them. Grandpa died, he insisted. After the news came out, people were getting surgery to remove their bones. His heart couldn't take what humanity had become, if it was humanity anymore. I can't forgive myself for helping him die, but I know it's what he wanted. In no way would I justify murder, but what I did wasn't murder. He pleaded so many times. He said it was mercy. So now I hold on to memories that aren't mine, while humans crumble. But a world without him seems a bit less human, a bit less beautiful, and for a long time, I don't know how long I can survive without him. I got married, he wasn't human, it's impossible. He had gotten surgery to make his eyes bigger. Lots of people had, but all I could see was a machine trying to look human, like the skin was being stretched open. The worst part of all of it was everyone said it was for beauty. That beauty meant no bony hands or neck. That beauty meant eyes too wide for seeing. Beauty meant to never bleed. And while they tore themselves apart for beauty, they ripped away what made them beautiful. It was the brain that was the final straw. They said that beauty was compliance, but in prettier words, and so they complied. I remember reading about fear in the human brain. There was a study, and it talked about something called the Valley of Uncanny, one of the most deep-rooted fears for humans. The more something strives to look human but doesn't, the more humanity rejects and fears it. Machines are fascinating when they have eyes and hands, but when they try to wear skin, we reject it. We know that something is pretending to be what it isn't. That's what humans are to me now. They've denied their instincts and embraced this uncanny to become pretty, and now the spiders that are left here have become more human. At what point is a person considered dead? Science would say someone who is brain dead, but what if they are still walking, breathing, heart still beating inside a metal chest? When are they dead? And at what point did humanity start to kill itself?